US President Joe Biden has announced American troops will leave Afghanistan nearly 2 weeks earlier than planned, by August 31st. That's despite Taliban forces making rapid advances across the country. The withdrawal will bring an end to the longest US war, a nearly 20-year conflict. But the departure of NATO troops is leaving many worried about a swift deterioration of security in Afghanistan.
The Taliban say this footage shows them celebrating after seizing control of a key border crossing into Iran. It was one of several advances made by the militants throughout Afghanistan in recent weeks. They've been gaining ground since the US announced the departure of its military by the end of August, the same military that ousted them from power in 2001. In Washington, President Biden defended the speed of the withdrawal, saying the US would no longer sustain the human cost of a conflict that cannot change Afghanistan's course.
So let me ask those who want us to stay. How many thousands more Americans' daughters and sons are you willing to risk? I will not send another generation of Americans to war in Afghanistan with no reasonable expectation of achieving a different outcome.
But Biden also argued the US had achieved its original goal of routing al-Qaeda after the 9/11 terror attacks that led to the invasion. He said the decision to leave was overdue.
We did not go to Afghanistan to nation build. And it's the right and the responsibility of the Afghan people alone to decide their future and how they want to run their country.
Just days ago, the US pulled out of Bagram Air Base near Kabul, the center of its military operations for nearly 2 decades. The Pentagon says the withdrawal of US forces is now more than 90% complete. As foreign troops depart, the Afghan military is struggling to push back the Taliban, like here in Afghanistan's northwest. Peace talks between the government and the militants have so far failed. And many fear the violence will only get worse once the last US soldiers have returned home.
Franz Marti is a freelance journalist in Afghanistan. He joins me now from the capital, Kabul. Franz, welcome. The US troops leaving the country and, of course, those recent, mainly rural gains made by the Taliban. How likely do you think it is that the entire country could fall to the Taliban?
President Biden termed this scenario highly unlikely, and I, as well as other knowledgeable analysts, agree. This is not to say that the situation is not very dire. As you said, they have made unprecedented gains, 150 plus districts in the past a little bit over 2 months that they have taken over. However, it is noteworthy that so far they haven't made a serious attempt to take over a provincial capital. This seems from the Taliban side to be a deliberate decision because they seem to now have the strategy to take over rural areas and demand a surrender of the Afghan government at the negotiating table. And they will pursue that in the foreseeable future as far as it looks now. Even if they would abandon this strategy and would try, the advances have been so fast, there is a question whether the Taliban have enough manpower to actually take over everything. They might be able to take over several provinces, but not swiftly the whole country. Mm-hmm. In fact, I have spoken by telephone to people in newly conquered district, and they told me that barely any Taliban are left because they moved them to the new front lines. So that's why a fall of the whole country is still unlikely at this time.
Right. Franz, after 20 years of international support, the Afghan National Army is still not able to completely defeat the Taliban, and it seems not even really keep them at bay. Can you explain why that is?
There are several reasons. One thing that is important to note, the US presence was already before President Biden announced the withdrawal pretty small, and they didn't do that much. So most operations were done by Afghan government forces. So now that they lost that many districts, seems to be more a psychological issue. In many districts, government forces abandoned them without being like really forced by the Taliban. It wasn't that the Taliban have this overwhelming military power to really force them out. Several districts were abandoned like that without apparently due to a clear plan. Another thing is that like the Taliban as a guerrilla movement, they have like an advantage in this asymmetric warfare. And at the end, reality is also in not insignificant parts of the population, the Taliban have support, especially in rural areas. So there it is sometimes that the Taliban have more support than the government, and that allows them to like make them the advances and makes it difficult for the Afghan government forces.
OK, Franz, we're running out of time, but I really wanted to get a sense about the Afghan people themselves. I mean, are they happy to see the end of foreign troops in their country, or is there a sense they're being let down by the US and its allies?
It's very split. Some people profited from the US presence, from the progress that was made. They are worried, they fear what will happen if the Americans leave completely and if the Taliban move forward like this. There are others that have seen little benefit of the progress, that remain like very rural, very traditionalist and religious, and they are happy that like troops apart. So it's like really, it's you have everything.
Right, journalist Franz Marti in Kabul, Afghanistan. Thanks very much for the analysis.